Hi, I'm Michael Popa, Executive Director of the Mainstream Coalition. Thank you for joining the first of 5 Johnson County primary candidate forums, co-presented by Mainstream Coalition, League of Women Voters of Johnson County, ACLU of Kansas, Advocacy and Awareness Group of Johnson County, and the Mid-America LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Today, we'll hear from 2 of the 5 candidates running for Olathe School Board District 3. However, all candidates on the August ballot for this race were invited to participate. Before we begin, I'll go over a few housekeeping items. If time permits at the end, we'll take questions using the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. And a link to the forum guidelines have been placed in chat, but I'll go over the highlights right now. Each question will be asked to all candidates. Candidates will then have 3 minutes to answer each question. And time permitting, each candidate will have 1 minute at the end for closing remarks. The partner organizations co-sponsoring this forum believe that democracy works best when citizens are informed and active. Thank you for taking the time to learn more about these candidates currently running for office and the important issues surrounding these races. And now I'd like to welcome our moderator, Liz Bendit, Mainstream Coalition Committee member, President of the Baum Box, and Adjunct Professor at University of Kansas School of Business. Hi, Liz.
So I'd like to introduce Tiffany Seaman and Julie Steele. Thank you for joining us, and let's go ahead and knock right into it. Oh, we still need to see Julie. There she is. Okay. So the first question will go to Tiffany Seaman. Tell us about your connections to the Olathe community and how that relates to your interest in education policy.
Sure. So I am an educator of 17 years. I spent 10 of those years in the Olathe School District. Teaching 1st and 4th grade, and was very actively involved in curriculum committees, human relations committee, and now I have 3 kiddos attending in pre-K, 2nd grade and 3rd grade this year. We had moved to Massachusetts for about 16 months and came back to Olathe in October, and we are very happy to be home and be back. And I thought this was a great opportunity and a great time to, run for Board of Education to serve our district.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele. Tell us about your connections to the Olathe community and how that relates to your interest in education policy.
Sure. I want to just say first, I love this school district. I moved here or was moved here in 1979. And my memories growing up here are just really the classic all-American experience. On a day like today, I can tell you I was probably in 1979 riding my bike around the neighborhood trying to round up kids so we could ride up to Thriftway. We lived in central Olathe on Layton Drive, and riding your bike to Thriftway with your pockets full of change so you could buy as much Double Bubble and Jawbreakers as you could was kind of the thing every day of the summer. If for those of you that are familiar with the area, right next to the Thriftway was a really small Dairy Queen, very quaint, and that was my first job. On a Friday night, the dads would get together and the kids would follow, and we'd walk up Nelson Road Hill to Olathe North High School and watch under the Friday night lights and cheer on the Eagles. So really growing up here was just a classical American experience. And from there, what I want to focus on is my educational experience going to Northview and Santa Fe and Olathe North. And really that educational experience shaped me for many moons later today. My decision to be a part of the future of the Olathe School District and give back started when this 8-year-old moved here. And so thanks, Mom and Dad, for doing that. And I grew up with just a real, the importance of giving back. And that was instilled in me. So, from my professional and my personal experiences thereafter, this is the place that I want to serve. I'm passionate about our school district and about serving students. Do I have any time left?
1 minute.
1 minute. Okay, real quick, I'll just say, professionally, I'm a former educator of Olathe schools and learned a lot being in the classroom for those years. I'm a current business owner, so I bring that business acumen also. And personally, I'm the mom of 4 incredibly different learners. So marrying all of that together, my history in Olathe and my former teaching experience, as well as being a business owner, I feel like is a great combination of skills for the board.
So we're going to go back and forth. So for every question, I'll just kind of reverse order. So this next question will go first to Julie Steele, then next to Tiffany Seaman. So what are your thoughts on parent, community, and student engagement? If elected, what ideas would you like to introduce?
Sure. Gosh, I think we learned so much during COVID about ourselves, about our community. I think engagement with the community and families is expressly what a school board member is called to do, to listen, to engage, and to be available. I think we learned hard decisions are either going to separate us or they're going to bring us together. And I think this next year we have such an opportunity to look forward, and the decisions that we make as a school district can really bring our community together.
Same question to you, Tiffany Seaman.
Sure. So I think definitely focusing our attention on what's best for all of our students is important. And we have a great community that can come together. We have so many stakeholders, be it the district level, the building level. So I served as a classroom teacher, our specialists, our volunteers, bringing all of those together to be able to help our students meet their greatest potential, and bringing a safe place for all of our students, our community members. I value the time that I spend with parents. Meeting with Dr. Yeager last week, that was one of my main questions was, how can parents and community members be more involved? I think they want to be. I think it's important to have that information. And I think there are some great upcoming opportunities and committees that are going to be formed where we can come in and come together. Again, I agree with Julie, coming together, all stakeholders, all community, to do what's best for our kids and put that in the forefront of our minds.
So this will be Tiffany Seaman. We'll get to go first on this next question. And I'm going to stop saying that. I think you guys get the gist. Reflecting on the COVID-19 impacted school year, what should Olathe do to address the learning gap that many students will have when returning for the 2021-22 school year?
So I have a passion for literacy. I'll probably bring that up quite often. I'm a literacy advocate. I was a special education teacher right out of college and quickly realized that the majority of my students were struggling learners in the area of reading. So I had changed my master's to specifically focus on reading. And first grade, obviously, it was very impactful for me. And then I moved into a reading specialist position, and that was life-changing for me. That's where my advocacy began. When I moved to Massachusetts for a short time, I was able to go to a conference there, and that was transformational. And moving back, I started a social media group, which is Kansas Science of Reading. So we advocate, and through legislation as well, parents, community members, and all in literacy. And so district-wise, I think we have to really focus as best we can our attention on building those foundational skills, making sure our students have those foundational skills, as well as, I know that, this is an emotional time for all of us, but especially our kiddos. They've been through a lot too. And oftentimes we might not see that in our kids. But I know that the stimulus funding, a big chunk of it for the Olathe School District is going into counseling service and extra counseling. And I value that part too. So making sure the emotional needs of our students are met, because if we don't have that in place, it's hard for them to feel comfortable and safe learning. And then making sure those literacy foundational skills and all foundational skills are really at the forefront of our thinking.
Same question to Julie Steele.
Great, Liz, can you repeat it?
You bet. Reflecting on the COVID-19 impacted school year, what should Olathe do to address the learning gap that many students will have when returning for the 21-22 school year?
Sure. We got exciting news here recently with COVID relief money coming to the state of Kansas. We don't know how much of that will be allocated to the Olathe School District. And I presume It will be teachers writing grants that will help disseminate that in ways that are going to directly go to the classroom and helping students. So that's exciting. We're getting money to help with that. I think we know that there's going to be gaps from the last 16 months. I feel like there's a gap in my learning from the last 16 months, and I wasn't even in school. So I feel like that's definitely something we've got to own that. We have to just understand that our kids need us in a way that they haven't needed us before. And we've really got to tune into that. I trust our educational experts in the district to really assess what those needs are and how we're going to meet our students on a base level, but also continuing in that social, emotional, mental health realm. I think that's super important.
So next question will start with Julie Steele. As COVID rates begin to rise, what are your views on mask requirements for elementary students with no available vaccination?
Sure. I think it's a community decision effort. We need to come together. I'm not sure if we're not making changes community wide. I don't know that making a drastic change at the school level is going to matter. I think that we need to be incredibly sensitive to our families who, for whatever reason, medical needs and such cannot get a vaccine, and they still have family members they're protecting. The Delta variant, it sounds scary. I believe science, I follow science, and I think that it's definitely more contagious. And I think it's something we need to be aware of. I had the opportunity to hear the CEO of Olathe Health speak this morning, and he said, by and large, people that are getting the Delta variant now landing in the hospital are not people who are vaccinated. And then he said, as soon as I said that, of course, we got our first patient who was vaccinated, who did end up in the hospital, but it wasn't of the severity that other patients had. So I think we've got to continue to encourage vaccinations. And yes, we have a whole young population in elementary school that can't yet get them. And we need to be aware of what's happening in the community and follow the science.
Same question to you, Tiffany Seaman.
Yeah, so I would say, I have to think about safety. Again, putting students in the forefront of our thinking, obviously. I appreciate currently what we have in place in Olathe as far as highly encouraging masks. But again, I know that there are differences in families and how they can handle that as well. But I do have a daughter who has a compromised immune system. So that has been, it weighs on me a little bit more. So we do have those situations. We have different situations in families. So I definitely would encourage mask wearing, and I like that there's encouraged mask wearing. Again, safety first. And I think that's going to be what helps us keep our students in school, because we know that in-person learning is key. It's crucial. It's where our learning is going to be most effective for the majority of students. I think some were able to thrive otherwise, but I know for students like my daughter who has ADHD and things like that, classroom setting is going to be important. So whatever we can do to make sure our students are safe. And yes, I will be vaccinating my own children when it's time, but they all three, so pre-K, second grade and third grade, they are at that age where they're not able to be vaccinated yet. So I am going to encourage them to wear masks, and I do appreciate that it's highly encouraged. And I am not a health expert by any means. I do not have that background. So yes, I think we have to follow the advice of our experts. We have to have guidelines in place to help us make those decisions. And I would appreciate that I have a board of, 6 other members that we could come together and try to make the best decision for all of our students and families the best we can, while thinking about safety and what's most effective for learning as well.
The district has previously committed to supporting DEI, but so far actions have fallen short of expectations. What will you do as a board member to ensure the district will fulfill its commitment to effective and measurable DEI outcomes? So we'll start with Tiffany Seaman.
Sure. So I had asked about involvement in the Diversity and Engagement and Inclusion Committee last week when I spoke with the district. I would love that opportunity to be a member. I loved human relations, but I felt like this was another step in the right direction. As you know, we have a council of including parents and students. I think students are a very important piece there, and a variety of stakeholders within the district that are able to come together. Knowledge is key. So, you know, if we're uncomfortable with the situation, that's probably because we don't know enough. We're not knowledgeable enough. So providing opportunities for learning and being able to grow in what we're not sure. So if a teacher isn't sure how to approach a situation, I think that's where the knowledge piece and the growth piece is there. And we need to be able to provide specific learning around diversity, engagement, inclusion. And I think that's an important piece that we need to just kind of keep going. And I know that we have a couple of other committees that are coming up that hopefully that will help with dispersing that information and that knowledge as well. So I'm happy to hear that.
Same question to you, Julie Steele. Do you want me to repeat it?
Yeah, please do.
You bet. The district has previously committed to supporting DEI, but so far actions have fallen short of expectations. What will you do as a board member to ensure the district will fulfill its commitment to effective and measurable DEI outcomes?
Sure. First, I'd like to start by saying I think consider the source. I have learned that I need to be learning and listening. My journey's taught me that as a leader, of the most important responsibility I have is to listen and learn to those who know more than I do about diversity and equity needs of our community. And, you know, our school district looking for every opportunity to work with the community, I think is an advantage, from recruitment of diverse staff, whether that's teachers at our district or, you know, firefighters and police officers in the community. Educational programming that addresses our diverse needs is super important. And, you know, we're in this space together, so we don't have to be separate our efforts. I think we need to do that in a communal way. We'll be better as a district when we work within the community that we live. And combining resources, addressing those needs, celebrating our heritage, I think all of those are important pieces to that. I think that the fact that we now have a diversity equity department in Olathe is great. It's new and moving along. And we're always, the one thing Olathe does such a great job of is looking at what do we need to be doing better. They do that across the board with all programming, and the diversity engagement department is no different. I would also just end with, you know, we are ethnically and racially diverse here in Olathe, and, you know, we should be educating our students about that and not shying away from our responsibility to make sure all students are seen and heard.
So Julie Steele will start us on the next question. Do you support a designated time for public comment at council meetings? Why or why not?
Okay. Absolutely. I think it's important. I think that, you know, I read something the other day that one of our neighboring districts is considering not televising or broadcasting, I should say, that section of their meetings. I think it's so important. It's part of the transparency. It's part of the making yourself available as a decision maker. I learned something every time that we have public comments at our school board meetings, something I didn't know about a certain, and they're not, COVID was hard, right? So not all public comments were just like pleasant experiences, and that isn't the point. And the point is to be a listener as a decision maker, and also coming together as a community and realizing some things that maybe your path doesn't cross that are important for you to understand.
Question goes to you, Tiffany Seaman. Do you need me to repeat it?
That would be wonderful, please. Thank you.
Do you support a designated time for public comment at council meetings? Why or why not?
Okay, yes, so I definitely do as well. I appreciated being able to speak at the, I think it was March board meeting about literacy. I just think, you know, having that community perspective, we represent as board members all stakeholders. So it's not just our team of, board members making decisions. We have to think about parents, educators, administrators, community members, all those stakeholders, and we represent them. And in order to make the best decisions for our students, we need to realize all those perspectives and come together and grow. I think, like Julie said, you're going to learn something every time. It might be something you agree with, it might not, but it's going to make you think and give you another perspective of why, what we're doing is important, and maybe we need to make changes or think about it a little bit differently. I think we need to be open to that transparency. I appreciate transparency as a parent, but also as an educator. So that was my first time being on the opposite side, being on the parent role. And it was much different, but I appreciate, hearing from everyone. And I think that's important for us to come together.
The next question, we'll start with Tiffany Seaman. What is the Olathe School Board's role in attracting, supporting, and retaining quality teachers?
Yes, so I think they do a fabulous job of supporting and recruiting and retaining quality educators. It was hard for me to leave Olathe. I'm going to admit that. I had my sights set on literacy, but it tore my heart apart leaving first grade and leaving Olathe and leaving such a strong community. These teachers and families, and I still have connections with them, became like family to me. So, I think just that, seeing that community support, and like I said before, the diversity, I want my kids to be able to have an education where they can see how we can work together and include others. And there's more to it than just the educational piece. The social emotional, we're always striving to do better and to help our kids and support them. And I think, again, like back to the question we just had, there's open lines of communication. I think we always have room to grow in that and build that. And I think we are working on it. But just knowing, I just know how important kids are to these educators and this environment in this district. And they're always going to put those kids first, even though there might be pushback on certain issues.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele. Would you like me to repeat?
Mm-hmm.
What is the Olathe School Board's role in attracting, supporting, and retaining quality teachers?
Sure. The school board's role is to be an advocate for the school district and to be supportive of public schools. They're not necessarily in charge of the hiring, with the exception of the superintendent. So I think being a leader in the community and advocating for the great things that our district is doing, being a positive voice for how our district is growing and how our district is always looking for ways to improve, I think that's super important as a leader on the school board. As far as the retention and the recruitment of staff, I think educators need to make sure we're hearing them, and I think we need to be open to hearing from them. Maybe even follow up with people who have left and find out why. I do know staffing is a bigger issue right now than just Olathe School District is experiencing. It's a kind of a community-wide that goes way beyond the school district, but all the more reason for us to be pulling together with community leaders and stakeholders to share ideas on recruitment and retention. That was, one of the main things I know in our company that we're always focusing on is retention. Also, I know that at Olathe Health, I learned that this morning too, that the biggest need they have right now is staying staffed. If they're not able to take patients, it isn't because of COVID any longer. It's because they don't have the staff for the beds. They've got the beds, but they don't have enough staff for those beds to be full. This isn't just an Olathe district problem. So pulling together with the community in a broader sense, and all of us knowing, we're in this together. So let's share our resources and our ideas.
So now I'm going to take one of the questions that's come through the Q&A from the audience. And I think we'll start again in the reverse order. So Julie Steele, what is your opinion on school dress codes? Do you believe what is currently in place is sufficient? And do you see any sexism around the current dress code?
Interesting. Good question. I think right now our dress code is it isn't strictly defined, and I think that building level administrators have some say in that. I would say, having a dress code in the public school system it isn't something that we would do. I think that those are probably individual situations that need addressing. So probably doing that more so an administrator at the building level is probably the right way to go with that. If there is an issue that arises, I think that that's when it can go to another level. But I don't see that. I haven't seen that listed as a goal for the district, and I don't think it's something that the school board, of course, they'd be involved if that was presented as a policy that needed approval. But I'm not seeing that that is a on a grand scale, a concern or a need.
Same question goes to you, Tiffany Seaman.
Sure. I am not aware of any as well. And I don't think as an educator in the district, I saw it being much of a concern that I ever really noticed. Maybe here and there, and the administrator was able to kind of communicate and talk through it. But I could see the perspectives on both sides. We had originally, when we had found out, this is kind of Massachusetts, when my daughter was diagnosed with ADHD, and it was much more prevalent than we thought, more extensive. We noticed that there was going to be a dress code if we were to take her to kind of a specialized school for a short amount of time. And that was simply because of her needs as far as attention. So I had never thought about it in that way, in that perspective. But as a whole, I don't think that that's something that, is going to be something that we have to consider. But I would definitely think, if there are perspectives that we need to think about with dress codes, definitely we could think about that. But I do agree that, we do have to have some guidelines in place, obviously, but for the most part, I think those guidelines have worked and it hasn't been a concern that I've known of.
So I'll take one more question that came from the Peanut Gallery. Thank you for that. And so we'll start with Tiffany Seaman. What is your plan to help our district hire and retain educators of color to ensure that our student population is represented in our staff?
So from my knowledge right now, I think having our diversity, engagement, and inclusion team, that is something that they really focus on and talk through, and they have a council that's represented by many different members. And I think that that's one thing that they really support. And so I would want, to make sure that we were thinking of that. We want to have our students feel comfortable and safe and be able to learn in an environment that represents them. And I think that would be a great opportunity. So I would be open to learning more ways in which maybe that council is working towards that. And I would love to be a part of that conversation, because I do think our students need to see themselves represented, and that's going to make for a greater learning environment and reach their full potential.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele.
Sure. I agree with everything Tiffany's saying. I think it's so important in our community in Olathe. Gosh, I've got notes. I'm not above notes. I don't do forums every day, but I don't have this statistic in front of me. I think it's something in Olathe, maybe our non-white population is around 21%, and in our district it's higher. And so our local leadership at, the city and the school district level doesn't represent those same percentages. So our students, our children in the community, they need to see themselves in those places, also in leadership roles. And they need to see themselves in those places making decisions and being the decision makers. Finding and empowering, those qualified people should be a communal goal and something we can do together. I just participated in Olathe Civic Academy, and on the night that we went to the police department, I pulled the, not the chief, but deputy chief, if that's the next guy down. And I said, tell me what you're doing about recruitment. And he kind of went, oh boy, it's such a thing. I know we're all feeling that in the community, and we need to be reaching in better and doing better sourcing. I know that they're going to specific schools, and I actually talked to Dr. Yeager about this too, and he said we are too. We're going to specific schools that maybe people of color are going to school at to sell them. I have a note to myself to get in touch with Tim McKee at the chamber to say, hey, do we have a commercial that talks about how great this place is? Because when you're out there recruiting and people are like, where's Olathe? And it's like, come on, we need to really be selling how great it is to live here. Personally, I'd like my daughter to graduate Olathe schools having had a teacher or a mentor that looks like her, where she can see her potential in a real, tangible, daily experience at school. And she hasn't had that yet. So I'm really looking forward to being a participant in that process.
So another great question came through our chat. So I'm going to continue to take advantage of those awesome questions. So this one goes to Julie Steele. With a majority of graduates who do not get a college degree, do you support technical training in the Olathe School District? What can be done to meet this challenge?
Yeah. What an important question, really. We say that we prepare students for their future, and that might be career readiness, and that might be college readiness. And we owe it to those students and everyone in between to be meeting their needs. So it is important to the district, and we have a career technical program in the district that is doing a great job. Are we finding all the kids? I don't know. I don't know what those numbers would be. Are we making sure that the kids that really would benefit from that program know that we have it? We're big, and we're still I'm still that girl in 1979 in Olathe, and Olathe is not the same. And so we need to really combat our constant growth and really make sure that, yes, we have 30,000 students we're educating every day, but are we finding them for those programming? And I think career and technical readiness upon graduation is important. Another thing we need to do is keep communicating with the stakeholders and find out for those types of jobs, are we producing what you need? And if not, please come on board. Let's have a conversation and figure out what else, where are your gaps in hiring, and how can we be a part of that?
Same question goes to you, Tiffany Seaman. Would you like me to repeat it?
I'm okay, I think. So I feel like in my position, so I'm from Wichita, and coming to Olathe after, so I graduated from KU and stayed in this area, I had not seen what our district does as far as the different high schools having different programs that students can kind of filter into and have those opportunities. I think that's very unique and amazing, and I think it's important. As a high schooler, I remember that we were able to have a block of time my senior year to go out and experience different careers and volunteering, but it wasn't the same. I think having those opportunities is wonderful. And again, that's community building and community outreach as well. So working within our community. And I think that's so important, coming together with our kids and supporting them is just another realm of learning, bringing in community members as stakeholders to help our students meet their greatest potential. So I think community outreach is important. And then I think I'm just not aware of this. So this is kind of a learning curve for me. I'd want to know more information and growth, how early that information is given to parents so they can start thinking about that, what that looks like. I think as Julie made that comment, what does that look like? We want to make sure that the students know, are we reaching all of the kids, and are they all given that opportunity? As far as being aware that that's something that they are able to go into if they would like to choose that path. So I think, whether it's college or trying a technical hands-on, you have to find what you are passionate about, and we want our kids to be able to do that. And I think some of them know pretty early on, and some of them don't. So giving them the opportunity, whether they know and they want to dive into that and make sure, or whether they want to kind of pursue that and kind of see and see if that's the right fit for them before they head off into the workforce or college.
So next question goes back to Tiffany Seaman. What suggestions do you have for improving the Olathe School Board's mechanisms for gathering community input? What would you continue, change, and or implement?
Just from a parent perspective, kind of being more involved that way, I would love more communication. I know that we have board docs, and sometimes it's hard to go back through and find the information that I need, although it's there and it's referred, and I appreciate that. But I would also, I like the idea of having some kind of, newsletter or something about what's going on as far as the Board of Education and their district. And I know that I think some board members share that information, but I don't think the community is aware of that as a whole. And I think as much communication as we can have would be important. That was one of my main questions, like how is the agenda set up? What goes into that? Because, I think it's important that parents know that as well. So we kind of know what's coming up, and we know if there is kind of certain things that we want to learn more about or speak up about and advocate about as well. So just having some kind of more formal communication. I know we have our newsletters that come out for the district, but specifically to Board of Education and the decisions that are being made, I think are important as well.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele.
Sure. Gosh, communication, it's so important. And I think where you go for facts matters. And I think being available to people to have those conversations is so important. I love our district office. I'm proud when I go there for a meeting, or you just feel good about your district there. But what if we didn't always have our board meetings in that room, in that way? What if we, I know we probably can't meet at Poor Coffee House, where I seem to be meeting most of my constituents during this campaign. However, what if we went somewhere else and we're a little more accessible prior to and after those board meetings? And what if some of that neighborly conversation happened? I love Tiffany's idea of a newsletter specifically that comes from the board. I think that's a great idea. We have our Olathe news. It's great. We get to highlight, student achievement, and for those more maybe detailed conversations or questions, I think there we can be better. And that is the thing about Olathe. We are always looking for ways to be better. And it's the changing tide that we need to work harder at accurate communication.
Next question starts with Julie Steele. Do you feel the Olathe School District has an issue with transparency? Why or why not?
I think there's that. I do think that there's that thought out there. And I'm going to just say, I as I prepare and think about serving on the board, there is no part of me that thinks that I knew everything that went into decisions that were made. There's, executive session that no one will ever know what's talked about there. It can't be. It's legally protected. There's also personal conversations that families have with the superintendent, with the board members, that they're not going to out, that matter in their decision-making process. So I think there is that thought. School districts across the nation had decisions that were closely observed and analyzed by their local communities. And, we head into this post-pandemic space, we hope, and we need to be transparent and we need to call ourselves out. That's super important. But constituents also have a responsibility to go to the source. I've learned that in this campaign. It's very hard to make sure that the truth is what is out there. And I think it's as we know, dialogue is two ways. And so, yes, as decision makers and leaders, we have a responsibility to constantly be trying to improve. And as constituents, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are seeking truth.
Same question goes to Tiffany Seaman. Do you feel okay, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Thank you. I appreciate it. I do see so much value in transparency. I I think that we're working on it. I do. I think we're working to improve it, just in speaking with Dr. Yeager and some of the board members and things like that. Again, like Julie said, we're working to grow. We always should be working to grow, all of us. I think I value transparency in that. I think that's going to help us come together. So we really want to work to, instead of being divisive, coming together. So I think that goes back to that. Yes, it may seem that being transparent, there might be more discussions and questioning and maybe people that don't agree with one another, but I think that's where we learn and grow. We have to have the information and the knowledge out there and be open. In order to, I mean, I always wanted to know what my kids were doing. I always tried to provide the best to allow parents to know what their students were doing. I think that's just something in us that we want to know the information. I do value, of course, that there are times where the information is private, confidential with certain, students and things like that, situations. But for the most part, being open and transparent is going to help us grow as a community and come together and potentially just do what's best for our kids. We have to all be a part of that decision.
So next question starts with Tiffany Seaman. Excuse me. The district has hired instructional and admin personnel without relevant or required credentials for the positions or job duties. Is this appropriate? Why or why not?
So hiring without having the credentials.
Correct.
Okay. I think just being an educator, I do have concerns with that. I will say that it doesn't always, having, say, a master's degree in reading, I'm going to use myself as an example, doesn't always mean that I knew what was best for my kids, unfortunately. With our new dyslexia initiatives, we're realizing that many teachers were not prepared in a way to teach structured literacy and the science of reading like we should have been. So even though I have a master's degree that says I am qualified to teach reading, I really wasn't. I didn't know that evidence-based instruction, and we're coming together to, it's really starting right now, coming together to meet those initiatives and bring those out and make changes in our colleges and universities to make sure that teacher preparation is there. So I think in that realm, I would say that we need to be looking at that and making sure that teacher preparation is aligned to knowing what we are teaching and doing what is best for our kids. I think that is a real problem. And then I think we are moving towards, I know specifically for literacy, sorry, this is kind of my jam. Specifically for literacy, we are starting to have specific assessments of knowledge coming out of college to say, hey, we know how to teach evidence-based instruction or not. So I think that would be important. So I'm kind of torn. I think looking at the whole picture, looking at experiences and the big picture is important, but also I would want someone that does have the background and does have the knowledge and wants what's best for our kids and knows, specifics. I think it would just take a lot more conversation and finding out kind of, what that looked like, because it might not be the teacher's fault, but, we might need to just kind of take a look at different, experiences that the teacher has had and what can they bring to us to help us and move us forward.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele.
Sure. The first thing I would say is I guess I would need more information. The one thing that does come to mind is I know that during the last 16 months, we had heard continually about substitute shortages. And I think we got creative quickly so we could pivot and make sure that we had good people in the classroom, even if they weren't qualified. I know that we put them through certain checkpoints to make sure that our students were safe. And it wasn't intended for them to be teaching curriculum. It was intended for them to keep doing what the qualified teacher was asking them to do. So if we are going to continue down that road, we probably need to make sure that we have checks and balances in place. If that has been something that's useful, and if this whole community-wide staffing concern that we're all experiencing in different sectors continues to be a thing in the Olathe School District, sure, let's be open to new ways of doing things, but let's also make sure that we've got checks and balances, because what have we been saying? We've got learning gaps. We need to focus on what students' needs are in the classroom. We need to get back to basics. These other things are very important, but we really need to get back to those pillars of education that our kids have missed out on in the last 16 months. And that is no fault of a teacher. And it is the fault of COVID. I always say when somebody's getting mad about something, we all need to say, I'm not mad at XYZ, I'm mad at COVID. That's where our anger should be directed, and then turn it into, what are we going to do with that? So I don't know that I'm against people who aren't qualified, but I am against that somebody not being qualified overseeing what's going on. And I think it's a great example of how we were positioning ourselves to pivot in the face of a global pandemic.
Next question, we'll start with Julie Steele. Do you believe the ratio of budget allocation for admin versus faculty is appropriate and equitable with respect to the size of the district? Why or why not?
Sure. You know, I'm going to say this is one of those questions that I can't wait to be on the board and be educated by John Hutchison, who is amazing at all of these Topeka district allocation numbers. There is so much to know as a board member, and I am looking forward to that learning curve. Being a business owner, I understand that what we prioritize, we will find money for. And so I think that, you know, budgeting, forecasting, that's something I've done in my own company. But I look forward to learning that. It's complicated. Those allocations are complicated. And I wouldn't even pretend to be able to have an answer to that question until I learn more.
Same question goes to you, Tiffany Seaman.
I do think budgets are tricky. And just talking about the district and learning, it is hefty. So I praise them for that job and being able to handle all of that. You know, I have to say, I just always think about our kids, and we have to, I think if we are thinking about if administrators have a potentially larger, you know, allocated, you know, money or salary, are they doing what's best for our kids? Are they doing what's best for our teachers? Are they going above and beyond? Obviously, we always want to help our teachers. They have a hefty job as well. And I think they just want to feel valued. So I think we have that conversation as well. You know, we kind of put our administrators on a pedestal, which, you know, they do a great job and they do so much. And there's probably so much we don't know that they do and go through. And I would like to learn more about that as well. But also, teachers really want to feel valued. It might not just be money. They just want to know that they're valued. And obviously, they are there because they love the kids. And that there's nothing greater than that. But I think that's one way to feel valued. And it would be something that I would want to learn more about too, and how that all works out and how the money is allocated. And I am no expert in that part. And I know that it's a big job and something to think about. But I think we would always advocate for helping our teachers with whatever best we could.
So just as a note to folks watching, we are down to our last 5 minutes. So if you have a burning question that you would like to ask, throw that in the Q&A because we're coming pretty close to the end here. So the next question will go to Tiffany Seaman. What are your views on discipline practices across the district?
So I think I always say, first and foremost, you have to build a relationship with your kids. I think that comes back to the inclusion piece, having them see that you're a safe and welcome space. I've been called a quiet warrior by my coworkers before. I'm more of a quiet, and my sister's an educator too, and she would come and observe me when she was doing her student teaching, and she would say, I don't know how you keep, your environment so manageable with your quiet voice, but it just seems to bring them down. So I think just having those relationships, different kiddos respond to different educators in different ways, like we always do. So we try our best to have a variety of educators, obviously working with our kids. And it's great to have those mentor teachers that they can go to. But relationships are key. If they don't feel like they're safe and loved and cared about, then the learning is going to, be secondary. We have to think about that. I worked in, and I know that this is not the term that they use anymore. I had asked, but we weren't quite sure. In the school that I worked in, we had the emotionally disturbed program. So I know it's not that anymore. We have a more positive term for it. But just working with those kids that, had those greater emotional things going on with many factors that maybe were out of their control. Again, having that relationship, taking the extra time has always been key. So even in my reading intervention, my math intervention, I would have lunch with my kiddos. I would go out of my way to say, hey, I'll come and see you in your community events. They need to be seen and they need to be represented and they need to feel safe. And I think if you have those in place, the discipline is not, usually typically a problem, but it's something that I can seek out a support and help with as needed in other situations. And I can seek greater support if needed. I love that we have counseling and other outreach sources that we can turn to as well in our district.
Same question goes to you, Julie Steele.
Yeah, great answer, Tiffany. I couldn't agree more. I just think that relationship absolutely is so important. My principal at Northview Elementary was Andy Pettyjohn. There's a lot of people who will remember him. And what a great man. He was never not smiling. You felt his warmth as you saw him coming way from down the hall towards you. You just knew he was an ally of yours. And I think what you're saying, absolutely, that relationship, no matter who you are in the building. I also think we need to charge our all staff, teachers, admin, and everyone else that makes the building go round. Some of our most positive interactions for my 22-year-old now with special needs was with the front desk secretary at Olathe Northwest, and everybody loves Debbie Evers. There's not a person who doesn't, and she's so wonderful. So yes, I agree, Tiffany, relationship, it matters so much, and it doesn't matter who you are in the building, you can forge that with a kid. And what do they say? The kid who's acting out is the one who needs your affirmation the most. And so digging deeper, I think we have to remember, gosh, public education is the great equalizer. We don't know what's happening for kids at home before they ever get to school, or the night before, or where did they sleep, or did they sleep? And then you've got your kids who are so well loved and cared for. And guess what? They're going to act out too. And so understanding that it's bigger than the moment. One thing being a teacher, I think the thing, if I had to pick one thing I spent most of my time on, it would have been classroom management. It's just the thing that has to work for everything else to be successful. So it's something, and I too hear different buzzwords about, well, now we're trying conscious discipline, and now we're trying this, and I think that's great. As a district and as a board member, we should be very in tune with what are those things out there that we can constantly be trying to do better at.
Well, we have reached our time limit. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. We're going to give both of our panelists 1 minute each for a closing statement. And so Julie Steele, we'll start with you.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. And thank you to all the organizations that made this happen. I talked to another candidate for another race, and he and I were saying what a great opportunity this is to be live and for our voters to see us. So Tiffany, thank you. It's been really nice to meet you. Very
Thank
pleasant.
you.
So yeah. So I'll just end with, I love this school district. I'm honored to run for the board, and I'm so excited about the opportunity to serve. My pledge is that I will work with our talented, committed, everybody loves Dr. Yeager. I pledge to work alongside him to reach new heights with our district and with our current board as a team member. I think that's teamwork is super important. My desire to run didn't start during the past 16 months. It started when this 8-year-old moved to Olathe, and I didn't even know that was happening. So my education in this district is what prepared me for now. I'm here and I'm excited to get back to the community and serve our students and our families and to partner with our stakeholders. And I look forward to the opportunity.
Cut you off, Miss Julie Steele. We are at 1 minute. Tiffany, your 1 minute closing statement.
Thank you. I appreciate you all as well. And I've loved hearing Julie as well, because yeah, we're our hand is together.
Yeah.
I see a great benefit in having an educator represented on the board. I know that that's not necessary, but I think we've kind of walked in the shoes of those experiences that have been made by the Board of Education. We've been there, and I think that would be a great perspective to have on our board, and to be able to work together and bring that perspective as well. One of the main reasons, like I said, my family moved to Olathe was the diversity. So I valued the opportunity that a diverse learning environment provides for our own children, my own children. We want our kids to have an education that values inclusion, teaches respect in how we treat others, and encourages our kids to do what's right. And I feel like Olathe is that, and I want to continue to advocate and support that. I was able to attend a transformational literacy conference, and it was called A Rising Tide Lifts All Boats. So I think we have a unique and amazing opportunity.
I'm so sorry, Tiffany Seaman. You've also hit your 1 minute. It goes fast. I can understand.
That was fast. Yeah.
So we're just warming up.
Thank you very much for taking time to share your thoughts with us. As a reminder to everyone that has been on the call or on the Zoom today, there are 5 candidates running for office that were invited, and only Julie Steele and Tiffany Seaman chose to join us. So keeping that in mind, we very much appreciate them taking the time to share their thoughts with us today. And I believe that we are out of time. So thank you everyone again for your time and thoughts and compassion for the Olathe School District, and have a great evening.
Thank you, Liz, and thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
And again, thank you, Liz, for moderating, and to the candidates for taking the time to share their perspectives this evening, and to the organizations who partnered to make this forum possible. Again, they are the League of Women Voters of Johnson County, ACLU of Kansas, Advocacy and Awareness Group of Johnson County, the Mid-America LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and of course, Mainstream Coalition. Both the League and Mainstream will be posting recordings of this forum on Facebook and YouTube, so please share them with your network of voters. And we are hosting another forum this evening for Olathe City Council candidates at 6:30 p.m. If you haven't already registered, please do so at the link that I'm popping into chat right now. Remember, advanced voting by mail begins tomorrow for the August 3rd primary, and advanced voting in person begins on the 24th. The last day to request a mail ballot for the primary is July 27th. Before you vote, please visit vote411.org or ksballot.org to read up on candidate positions, find your polling or drop-off location, and make a plan to vote. Thank you again for joining us, and have a wonderful evening.